Test. Welcome to the GoNano conference on responsiveness to societal needs and values in nanotechnologies and beyond. We're very excited to see you today. Some of you might join us for the second time and were with us also last week. And for others, this might be the very first time that you're joining us. And we're very excited to see you all. We look very much forward to sharing our thoughts and our experiences and to discuss with you during the next 2 hours. My name is Lise Bitz. I'm the coordinator of GoNano on behalf of the Danish Board of Technology Foundation. And I welcome you today also on behalf of the GoNano partners. Our conference is split into 3 blocks on 3 Thursdays of 3 weeks. Last week, we opened our conference with 2 sessions on the topics on co-creation, gender equality and diversity in research and innovation. The recordings of those sessions can already be found on the GoNano YouTube channel. In our session today, we will delve into the GoNano co-creation process. We will do that together with the GoNano partner organizations who implemented the co-creation process and some of the participants who took part in it. Next, we will give a brief overview of some of the tools and guidelines that we developed on the basis of our experience. Finally, at the end of today, there will be an informal networking session where you can get to talk freely with the GoNano partners and other conference participants. Today's session is hosted by 4 of the GoNano partner organizations: RMIT Europe, the Proeffabrik, Technology Center of the Czech Academy of Sciences, and the University of Twente. The session host today is Daan Schuurbiers of the Proeffabrik, and he will guide you through the program and the sessions of today. To help him, he has with him Sike Jansma from the University of Twente. Sike, he will take care of the chat, and he will make sure that all the questions that you ask are directed to the host. Additional support today include our technical support, my colleagues Sire Nijhuis, Mette Simonsen, and Rihanna Bock. Throughout the conference, we are very keen to hear your thoughts and questions, and we therefore have inserted multiple opportunities for you to ask questions. Okay, so I only have a few more points by way of housekeeping before we can begin. As I said, we're very keen to hear your thoughts and your questions, and to facilitate that, we use a program called Slido. So we don't use the Zoom chat for your questions, but Slido. You might already have noticed it when you log in. There's an event running. There has been an event running from the beginning of this session called Where Are You Joining Us From? And throughout the session today, we will have different polls running, different events in Slido that you can participate in. If you haven't seen it, there's still time to log in. You log in Slido using the event code #GoNano. Also in Slido, we have a Q&A, and the Q&A is running constantly. So you can always ask your questions in the Q&A in Slido, and you can also upvote questions that the other conference participants have asked that you think are important and that you would also like to hear answers to. Now, in addition to Slido, you're joining the conference today through a program called Zoom. So we have a few housekeeping rules and reminders for using Zoom. Please, when you are not speaking, keep your microphone muted and your video off. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You can do this by clicking on participants in the bottom of the screen, and then the raise hand function will appear on the right hand side. If you have any technical problems, then please write in the Zoom chat and our technical team will help you. Also, very importantly, please notice that we are recording the session today and we are also live streaming it on YouTube. Finally, my last point, I'm sure it's not necessary, but I'm going to say it anyways, is that we would like you to always use an appropriate language in the Slido Q&A, but also in the Zoom chat if you have any problems. Okay, I think that was it for me. I think we're now ready to begin, and I would like to hand over the microphone to our partner organizations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And welcome to all the partners in the room, all the participants. I see now in a quick glance that there are already 45 people logged in, which is great. Just browsing through the names, I see that I know some of you, but many of you I haven't met. So let me just very briefly introduce myself. I'm Daan Schuurbiers. I was a partner in the GoNano-project, and I was involved with the pilot partners from whom you will hear a lot more throughout the next 2 hours in the co-creation process as a whole. Yeah, so as Lisa said, we roughly have two parts to this event. The first part, we would like to tell you a little bit more about what we did in the GoNano co-creation process, and the pilot partners, who I'll introduce in a second, will tell you more about the different events that we ran. And then after a short break, we will have the second part, and we won't just have the pilot partners, but we will also have a number of participants who have agreed to be here today and to share their experiences, to get also their view on what happened during those events. And importantly, I would say, is your own contribution, because we would like this session to be as interactive as possible, which means that it won't be just us talking, but through Slido, you can indicate your any questions that you might have, and we'll try to address them. And as Lisa said, Sikke is in the background, but Sikke will intervene at points, just to give us an eye on what's happening in the Slido, because I don't have that open as I'm focusing on you, but Sikke will let us know. Also, just a very brief shout out to 3 people who you will, if everything goes right, will not hear or see at all during this session, but who are doing very important things in the background, and that's the supporting team, the technical facilitators at the Danish Board of Technology, Sigrid Vedel-Neuhaus, Mette-Marie Simonsen, and Rihanna Bock. And apologies for the pronunciation of your Danish names, but I hope that was clear enough. Okay, just as a very quick introduction to the overall topic of this session, what you see in front of you is an overview of the entire GoNano project. It has a beginning, then a big circle in the middle, and a number of branches at the end. And today, so this is the project from, let's say, the initial review in month 1, the literature survey in month 1, all the way until the final outputs, which are actually being produced as we speak. Today, we will focus mostly on that middle circle, which is an iterative cycle of workshops that together constituted, let's say, the practical or organizational co-creation process. So it began with a series of face-to-face citizens workshops in the Czech Republic, in the Netherlands, and in Spain. Each of these workshops focused on a different thematic area. So health was the topic in the Netherlands, and it was organized by the University of Twente, who you will hear more from later on. Energy was the topic in Spain, organized by RMIT, and food was the main topic in the Czech Republic, organized by the Technology Center of the Czech Academy of Sciences. So it all started with the face-to-face citizen workshops. The feedback, and you'll hear more about what the details of those workshops were later on in this session. The feedback from those workshops then was used in a series of multi-stakeholder co-creation workshops. Those workshops, the outputs of those workshops were put forward again to citizens and stakeholders in an online consultation, and some of you may have even participated in that online consultation. And those results again led back into a second round of multi-stakeholder co-creation workshops, again in the 3 countries. So all in all, we've had around 250 people attending these meetings and co-creating with us. We've had about 900 responses to the online consultations, 200 responses to interviews. So it was quite a large process, so to say. And our pilot partners will tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But before we do that, and before we introduce you to, or I introduce you to the pilot partners, we would like to get a sense of who is actually in the room today. So if I could ask our technical facilitator, oh, there we go. Thank you at DBT to move to the Slido poll. The first question, and I see there's already a couple of responses coming in, is what stakeholder group do you actually belong to? By the way, if you have difficulties of getting into Slido and would like to be a part of this of these questions or to contribute to these questions, then please feel free to drop a line in the Zoom chat, and the technical facilitators in Denmark will try to get you in so you can provide your responses there. So we have many researchers, and it's always the question then what researchers we are. We have some other, we have some policymakers. So for at least from each of the types of organizations that were, let's say, the 5 main groups in the GoNano-project, there is a representation. So that's good. How many, oh, the number of, hang on, 33 responses now. Okay. So mainly researchers then. And just to see in the, if you want to say a little bit more about the, or if you notice anything about the composition of the group or the people that are present in this room, please feel free to put that in the Slido Q&A if you notice anything. And then maybe if Sika sees something, he might just notify us of it. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. So we're mostly researcher here. The question now is whether you have used co-creation, have engaged with civil society, with citizens or other types of researchers, etc., in your own professional activities. Okay, this looks now like a 50-50. Oh, even more, yes. So we have quite an experienced group here. And 35% have not yet used co-creation. So again, if there's anything, if we are going too fast at any point of the set, if there is anything that is unclear about co-creation that you would like to get further information on, please let us know in the Slido Q&A, so we can come back to those after the pilot partners have presented their work. So roughly 1/3 has no experience with co-creation and 2/3 have experience with co-creation. Okay, that's good to know. I see there have been 36 questions. Yes, no, very well. Very good technical facilitators. Sigrid, go to the next question, please. You kind of intuitively felt the right moment. So the next question, is co-creation an appropriate tool for the development of nanotechnology? And this is not a trick question, by the way. This is an honest, open question. So if you feel it's no, then that's also, although we might ask you at some stage why you think it isn't. Okay, the majority thinks that co-creation is an appropriate tool. And a small, well, growing minority thinks that it is not actually. And here I would say there is no time to go into, let's say, a discussion with you now, but I would be very interested actually why you think it's not. So those of you, the 22% who've said that co-creation is not an appropriate tool, would you mind trying to go into the Q&A and just let us know why you think, or could you qualify that statement a little bit? I think that might be very interesting, a question to put forward to our panel members in a minute. So please do. Okay, yep. And then which of these stakeholders do you think is the most important to include in the development of new nanotechnologies? And you might want to include all 5, but we've limited this question to 2 types of stakeholders. So be careful who you choose here. You can also do 1, that's fine. You can also choose 2, but not all 5. So let's have a look. So policymakers is in the lead here at the moment. Oh no, hang on, we've got to change. Industry is in the lead here, followed by policymakers, closely followed by citizens. Civil society are somewhat below, along with researchers. That's interesting. We're almost at the 36 levels. Let's reflect on this just a little bit. And again, invitation to those, to you all actually, you know, why did you choose? Could you briefly indicate in the Q&A why you chose these? And if Sika sees any of these points, then Sika, please feel free to jump in. Okay, civil society is a little bit, is still down. It's a little bit up compared to the early stage of the survey. Yeah,
I see one comment down here, yeah. And someone says, in my experience, it's very difficult to convince citizens or even stakeholders to take time to contribute to co-creation.
Right.
So the investment of time.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I think we will relay that question to the pilot partners, because I think it connects a lot to what we found also when we did our co-creation events. And addressing that might be, you know, key to the success of your co-creation activity. So Sika, could you just remind me of that question again when we get to the discussion in the pilot partners? Because yes. I don't think we should forget this.
Yes, definitely. And one quick other comment is that someone says, yeah, it's incredible that researchers are so low in the poll with the stakeholders that should be included.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Although, yeah, no, it is. Yeah, at least 10% lower than the 3rd spot. You're right. Interesting. I think we should get back to this. So also already to the pilot partners, Craig and Marek and Anne, maybe you can think about this already a little bit and see if you have a response to this or the beginning of a response. All right, Sika. So yes. Thank you for your contributions to these. I see almost all participants have joined, which is great. And I would like actually in the discussion after the presentation also give you a chance to move onto the floor, as it were. But let's first, before we do that, let's have a look at who our pilot partners are, and let's listen to what they have to say before we enter that discussion. So here they are. And I will just quickly introduce them to you now. You can also see it on the screen. There's Lenka Hebakova, and I apologize for the pronunciation, Lenka. She's at the Technology Center of the Czech Academy of Science, and she was responsible for public engagement in the discussions on nanotechnologies in Europe. And she works together with Marek, who is also a researcher at the TC CAS and was responsible for the online consultation. And we will hear Marek present the online consultation in a minute. There's also Craig Richmond at the RMIT, and he was responsible for the energy pilot within the GoNano-project. So RMIT is in Spain. And then there's Anne Dijkstra and Sika Jansma, both assistant professors at this time. So congratulations with that, Sika, at the University of Twente. And they were responsible for the health pilot study. So you will hear Anne talk more about the stakeholder workshops in a minute. The first presenter for now, with just a brief pitch on the citizen workshop. So this was the first step in the 4-step iterative co-creation process will be Craig. But before we listen to Craig for a couple of minutes, we would just like to briefly show you a quick video which was made by Hanny van den Berg, who I see is also in the room. Hi, Hanny. She prepared this video. So if we could just have a look at that, Sigrid. Thanks.
When creative minds come together, new ideas emerge. The GoNano-project sought to unleash the power of co-creation on the design and development of nanotechnologies, orienting research to products and services that citizens want and need. Researchers and product developers joined forces with citizens and societal stakeholders to explore nanotechnology innovations and their alignment with societal needs and values. The GoNano co-creation process has brought together a wide variety of citizens and stakeholders in a series of coordinated events across Europe and has produced a wealth of creative ideas for future nanotechnologies. Over the course of the events, almost 100 product suggestions were collected, which were then condensed into 5 concrete design suggestions that can be fed back into ongoing research and innovation activities. These suggestions strengthened collaborations between users and producers of medical research, food products, and renewable energy solutions. We've learned that co-creation in the early stages of research and innovation can bring the needs of future users into focus, and that responding to those needs can lead to win-win opportunities for researchers, producers, and users alike. How did the GoNano Consortium do it? Find out more on the website and on YouTube.
Okay, so that workshop, that video hopefully gives you a flavor of what happened at the workshops, but you may also have many more questions and on this. So what exactly happened and when and where, what came out of it? And that's what the next 3 presentations are for. So Craig will first tell you about the citizen workshops, the first step. Then Marek will tell you more about the online consultation, which was the 3rd step, and then Anna will tell you more about stakeholder workshops, which were the 2nd and 4th step. So please, Craig, can I give you the floor for the first presentation on the citizen workshops?
Yep. Hi, Dan. Hi, everybody. I'm assuming that you can see and hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, it's fine, Craig. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I've just got a few slides to accompany my presentation, so I'll share my screen now. And here. So you can see my presentation now, yeah? Is that okay, Dan? You can see the slides?
Yes, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's okay, Craig. Yeah, go ahead.
Magic. Thanks very much. Okay, so the first slide here is just looking again at the GoNano infographic. And I remind you that the events within the co-creation process that Dan was explaining there were set up around 3 main themes on food, energy, and health. And so I'm going to present some of the highlights from the face-to-face citizen workshops, and Marek and Anne will then tell you about the other events in their short presentations following. So the 3 themes were divided across our 3 pilot partner countries, with the workshops on nanotechnologies and food being held in the Czech Republic, those on energy in Spain, and those on health in the Netherlands. So we produced some video highlights from each of these workshops, which I don't have time to show you now, but you can view them on the GoNano website or the YouTube channel, perhaps during the break or after the session today. So in all 3 workshops, we aim to maximize diversity and inclusivity in our participant pool. But there were a few noticeable differences in the final makeup of the participant groups at each workshop. Our colleagues in the Czech Republic contracted a professional agency for recruiting, and they obtained the desired diversity almost perfectly. In Spain and the Netherlands, we chose to recruit participants ourselves, and we achieved a good balance on most of the diversity indicators, except for education level, where we mainly attracted highly educated individuals to our workshops. So we did, however, manage to rectify this in the online consultation, which I believe that Marek will touch upon in his presentation about that. as I mentioned, the 3 workshops were in 3 different countries and focused on 3 different themes, but they all followed the same 3-step format. That was discussions about future scenarios, creation of ideal technologies, and finally messages to stakeholders involved in the development of nanotechnology. So at the beginning of each workshop, the participants were given background information covering the basics of nanotechnology and some examples of its applications. This background information also included some hypothetical future scenarios designed to stimulate debate around potential applications of nanotechnology. So the example shown here, dreaming of carrot cake, as some of you might be doing if you've not had your lunch yet, it's a scenario based on a hypothetical conversation between an elderly lady and her daughter about food preparation practices in the year 2030. So again, I don't have time to tell you the full story today, but that story, along with all of the other scenarios and the background information, are available online for those of you who may wish to take a closer look later. So the next step was where we asked the citizens inspired by these future visions to come up with their own visions of products of the future, working together in groups. The example shown here is from the Czech workshop on food and is an idea that they came up with for a new food packaging system that includes a color-coded food quality indicator and avoids non-biodegradable plastics in its production and use. The next idea is from the Spanish workshop on energy, and that's for a mobile energetic sheet that works in the same way as a solar panel, but is produced in a rollable curtain-like form to make it more adaptable for integration into buildings. And finally, this idea was from our Dutch workshop on health, and that was for a device that could be placed in bathrooms to monitor the population for indicators of various illnesses. Something similar to what's actually being done at the moment for the control of coronavirus. I think it started in Italy and it's been done in a few other places. So the citizens were definitely onto something when they were thinking about that one. And so the last step in the stakeholder, not the stakeholder workshops, the citizen workshops, was the writing of messages to our stakeholders. And so here you can see a few of the examples of the types of messages that the citizens wrote. So the citizens thought that technology should be safe and that they should protect the environment, that batteries should last longer, and that developments in healthcare should not be at the cost of accessibility to healthcare. We translated these messages and then compared them across the 3 workshops, where we found some commonalities across areas such as safety, affordability, and accessibility, among others. These messages, along with the product suggestions and our analyses, were presented as inputs to the following step in our co-creation process. That following step was the stakeholder workshops, which my colleague Anne will tell you about in her presentation later. And that's it. That's your whistle-stop tour of the citizen workshops for the co-creation process. So thanks for your attention, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have on this in a little while. So Dan, that's back to you now.
Thanks, Craig. Just before we go to the next presentation by Marek, I was wondering, Sike, is there any action on the Slido Q&A at the moment? Could you just inform us a little bit?
Yes, not in relation to these presentations. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate, or comments as well, don't hesitate to put them on Slido.
Yeah, we will have time to give you the floor also after the presentations by Marek and Anne. So please feel free to drop in then. But let's first hear what Marek and Anne have to say. So Marek, could I give you the floor to tell us a little bit about what happened during the online consultations?
Hi everyone, thanks Daan. Yes, I will now have the presentation about the online consultation as the next step, as already Craig suggested. So I will just try to share my screen now. Hopefully you can see the slides now.
Yes, it's working, Marek.
So the online consultation, here is actually the methods. We tried to kind of continue with the efforts which were already suggested by Craig. We had the citizen workshop, then we had the first stakeholder workshop, and the next step was the online consultation. During the previous steps, we had 15 ideas which were developed by citizens and then sort of validated through stakeholders. And what we tried to do in this step was to find as many diverse respondents as possible in 5 different states in European Union. So we had respondents from Czech Republic, Denmark, Spain, Ireland, and Netherlands. Also, in these polls or studies, usually there is this problem with overrepresentation of highly educated respondents. So we hired third-party companies which helped us with finding lower educated participants. That means that we basically had 54% of all respondents having either primary or secondary education. And with these respondents, we kind of concentrated on 3 different areas which interested us. First one was the overall sentiment about nanotechnology in general. Second one was the desirability of all the product suggestions which were developed in the energy area, food area, and health area. And the third part were the needs and values which mattered the most for the respondents. So now we can see the general results. You can see that the general sentiment towards nanotechnology is positive or mostly positive. However, the same number or maybe even slightly higher number is neutral responses. When we take a look at other new technologies, we can see that nanotechnology is in fact one of the technologies which have the highest percentage of these neutral voices. So that could actually mean that people do not have a clear idea of what nanotechnology in real life means so far. And also from the European studies, it seems that this notion doesn't change so much during the last 10 years. So it may suggest that we don't have so many examples of nanotechnologies used nowadays. So this would mean that nanotechnology still is quite an open technology for people to build their trust or mistrust. However, we also asked if they have some idea about nanotechnology, what do they connect with nano? We found out that mostly 1/3 of the respondents connect nanotechnology with its size characteristics, and other big chunks of groups imagine nanotechnology is something advanced connected with future, but you can see it's not anything specific. It's more vague. Some people also connect nanotechnology with IT, AI, and different new technologies. Now we can see the results, which show that the product suggestions which were the most popular, which kind of won the popular vote, were mostly these that were connected with health. We can see improvement of diagnosis of cancer through monitoring proteins. We can see diabetes, early diagnostic devices, and we can also see one represented from energy, which is strategies to educate the wide public about renewable energy. So these were the 3 most popular ideas. On the contrary, there were these food applications, which were perceived as rather more problematic than the other ones. And we think that this might be connected with people being kind of hesitant to eat something which includes kind of new technologies itself. So, and the last thing, what we tried to find out was about the essential needs and values people connect with nanotechnologies. There is a specifically high concern about the safety when it comes to food and health. Also, this notion, when we take a look at the other studies in the European research, we can see that this notion kind of repeats and safety aspects still remain one of the key features. and the essential needs and values also for the energy seem to be connected with the promotion and kind of a good way to let's say explain what energy, what renewable energy means. So these were the main results, and I'm looking forward to answer any of your questions in the next step. That's it for me.
Thank you, Marek. And just quickly before we move to Anne, Sike, any questions that we may need to pick up on after Anne's presentation in 7 minutes?
Yeah, there is one question for Marek with the online consultation, and that is that someone thought it's quite interesting to see that there were so many positive perceptions of nanotechnology, and whether there was a difference among the pilot countries, so of the different application areas, I think.
Yes.
And the other question relates to Craig's presentation, and someone noticed that the issue of privacy and data was especially relevant for health solutions, but why not for the other application areas?
Yeah. So Craig and Marek, can I ask you to think about that a little bit and come back to it after Anne's presentation? Okay, good. All right, then the final presentation from our pilot partners on the stakeholder workshop, which was the second and the fourth step in the overall iterative co-creation process. So Anne, could you shed some light on these events, please?
Yes, I try to unmute my camera and I will try to share my screen.
That's all working now, Anne.
Yeah, you can see it now, I think.
Yep.
The presentation. Okay, that's good. I will tell a little bit about the two stakeholder workshops that were the second and the fourth step in the co-creation process. And in the first stakeholder workshops, we organized the workshops in the 3 countries as well, in the Netherlands, in Czech Republic, and in Spain. And these are a few pictures of it. And the aim was to develop product suggestions based on the values and the needs that the citizens brought in the citizens consultations, and to work from the broader themes, health, food, and energy, towards more specific project suggestions. In total, 89 stakeholders participated, and they had different backgrounds from research, business, civil society organizations, a government, policymaker, but also a few citizens who participated in the first round. And the format from the first stakeholder workshops in itself also followed the co-creation steps, which were exploration. In the exploration phase, the participants got to know each other, and the needs and values from the citizens were explored, including their own interests were identified. In the ideation phase, the participants imagined and co-created responses to the needs and the values that were brought in. And then they tried to visualize that in storyboards in the prototyping phase, and come to concrete designs and product suggestions. And they presented those in the visions, in the storyboards, and in the reflection phase, and reflected on the outcomes. And in the pictures you can see the presentation of a storyboard in Spain. So what were the suggestions that the different people in the stakeholder workshops talked about? You see a list on the screen, and I will not go through them all because of the time, but like in the Czech Republic, the stakeholders talked about antimicrobial meat packaging. In Spain, for example, about autonomous sensor technologies for smart homes. And in the Netherlands, about implementation of an early diagnostic device for diabetes type 1. So in the second stakeholder workshops, which were held at the end of 2019, so the first round was in February, March 2019, then the online consultation took place, and then in the end of 2019, we organized the second round of stakeholder workshops in which we invited the same stakeholders again, who could partly come, and then we invited, of course, other people as well. The participants also had different backgrounds, as in the first round, and the aim was to come from the input from the online consultation and the previous rounds to even to more concrete action plans and a reflection on the process as well. So the second stakeholder workshops also followed the 4 steps of co-creation, introducing and discussing the product suggestions, and then in the prototyping, defining the next actionable steps, by also integrating societal considerations and reflect on that in the final step. In the second stakeholder workshops, the participants talked about different topics, in Czech Republic about novel foods, nanofilters, and smart food packages, and for example, related to safety, to technology, regulation, and the public input. In Spain, a project, the Harvestor project, was discussed, which is about autonomous wireless sensor nodes. And I will close one of the clickers in my window. So, because outside they are starting to do something with noise. And they talked about, in the Harvestor project, about data ownership, also about privacy parameters, broader stakeholder engagement. While in the Netherlands, they talked about health data for diabetes and involvement of the industry in the research regarding development of sensors. And they more specifically about the balancing of controlling the data and trusting it to others, and the value of data, which is of course both related to privacy as well, and also shared objectives and how to build a relationship between the different kind of stakeholders and engage other stakeholders as well in steps. So this is a more overview slide in which I want to say something about the reflection on the co-creation process or the cycle as a whole. We evaluated the workshops every time, so the 4 different activities, and what we found is that the workshops were highly appreciated, in particular also the final ones were really got a really high score. And that was, for example, because they provide new information, they contribute to new ideas and new perspectives. So the participants said, well, the activities can add values and they deliver relevant discussions and insights. But at the same time, we also found that it was difficult to translate the values and the needs which were formulated in the beginning into concrete actions and into concrete products. So that's a question about balancing openness and concreteness. And one of the points there is maybe what kind of starting point you want to start. So in the GoNano-project, we started explicitly with the citizens' needs, but you could also start with the technology when it's in development, and maybe from a higher point, look at the technological readiness levels of the technology. So there's maybe a trade-off as well. So reflecting more on the co-creation process, you could say that co-creation is a flexible way of engaging citizens and other stakeholders, and that is possible in many various ways. So you can engage people in different forms. And one conclusion then is that it is needed to continue efforts to enhance that relationship, to really build that relationship, and to make it more than a one-off action in which people are asked to contribute and then you continue with your work. So my final slide is to point out to 5 vignettes we produced about the co-creation approach, which can be found on the GoNano YouTube channel, which exemplify examples from the workshops in the Czech Republic on food, in the Netherlands on health, and in energy in Spain, and on 2 other topics, regulation and legislation, and the gap between research and industry. So with this, I look forward to hearing your questions, and I would like to hand over to Daan as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
Stop
Anne.
sharing.
We now have around 15 minutes before the break, and I can imagine that the presentations have answered some of your questions, but I can also imagine that they have raised new questions. And we have quite a bit actually now on the agenda, because we have the old Slido questions and maybe some new ones. We also have the Slido poll, of course, that raised some questions that I'd like to get into a little bit later. But maybe, Sika, if you don't mind, we could start just by having a look at who is in the audience at the moment, because I saw that there are now 54 people attending, which is great. But maybe we could take some time to just take your questions now. And Sika, I'm sorry to kind of not give you the floor, but feel free to jump in when needed. But at the moment, is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a question or a comment to our pilot partners? And perhaps the pilot partners could just turn on their cameras so we can see you. And if you want to raise a question, there is an opportunity to raise your hand in the participant screen. There's a little button with a little hand shape. If you click that, then we can see if you have any, if you would like to pose any questions. As I'm waiting for hands to be raised, Sika, maybe you could just quickly see if there's any question in Slido, and see if we can, if the pilot partners would like to respond to that. In the meantime, feel free to raise your hand if you want.
Yeah, there are quite some questions in Slido. It's becoming really active here, so that's really nice to see. Yeah, let's start with one of the latest questions, which is specifically directed to Marek by Andrea. And Andrea asks, Marek, does the broader literature reflect what you saw in the high proportion of people unsure about the good or bad effects of nanotechnology?
Thanks for the question. Not sure if I completely understood it, but if it was a question, if in the literature we can find similar findings about the people and their negativity towards nanotechnology, I would say that the findings kind of reflect each other. They are quite the same. So I would say what is actually interesting about nanotechnologies, as I suggested in the presentation, is that the notion about the positivity and negativity of the nanotechnology doesn't change so much in time. So there's still this open space for people to project their ideas into nanotechnology still. And it's like, yeah, I would say it's opened and it's not closed by either positive or negative sentiment, but we can see that there is most of the sentiment is positive.
And also their expectations of the effects of nanotechnology. Does it also, is it similar what you found?
Yeah, I would say this is a hard question, because if we talk about expectations, we actually talk about forecasting or projections into the future. And I would say it differs a lot for each of the application area. we have some clear ideas in health technologies, and I'm quite sure that in the literature, the notion is quite similar to the findings we have in GoNano. But when it comes, for example, to food products, I would say that the specificity or the concreteness of the suggestions is still not the case, either in our results or in other studies. So I would say it follows the trends, and it is specifically it is specific when it comes to the specific area of nanotechnology application.
At the moment, I don't see any raised hands, and now I'm just wondering whether that's because you cannot find the raise hand button, or if you would not like to raise your hand. Oh, hang on, I do see one. Just from Anna. Yeah, in a minute, Anna. Just to if you can't find it, it's the little participants button that has now 54 members. If you click that, then you see everybody who's in the room at the moment, and at the bottom of that little sub screen, there's the raise hand button. But Anna has found the button. So Anna, please.
Yeah, I think the question was answered by Marek, but I thought maybe I can add to the question about the literature, in particular in the beginning, when nanotechnology was starting like 10, 15 years ago, people would answer quite neutral about their attitudes would be answers to attitude questions would be quite neutral, and that was also the case with maybe unexpectedly for us now biotechnology in the beginning, GMOs in the beginning of the 1990s. People were quite positive about it until more controversy happened. So if people do not know much about the technology, they are inclined to be quite positive about it.
Yeah. Craig?
Yep. I just wanted to add another comment on the perception of nanotechnologies, and that was to qualify this perception across the different nationalities. So whilst there's no real noticeable difference in the perception within Europe, I think you can see differences in some studies that have been done across different continents, especially in Asia. So in Asian countries, nanotechnologies tend to be much more positively perceived, whereas Europe and then moving to sort of Northern America, the attitudes start to become a little bit more skeptical. So I just wanted to flag that.
Yep. Thanks, Craig. Sika, are there other questions?
Yes, there are a lot. So I try to combine also a few questions. I think this relates to the presentation of Anne, but I think other pilot partners can answer as well. Yeah, how did you recruit your stakeholders, and were there any difficulties with particular stakeholder groups to get them at the table?
Well, that's a good question, because it was quite difficult to recruit stakeholders, and that was one of the reasons that in the Netherlands we organized for the first round 3 workshops, because we thought that would make the workshops a bit smaller, but also more personal. And we identified a few key stakeholders, went to interview and talk with them, and then from there on invited other stakeholders. So we would have try to build personal relationships with the different stakeholders. And that worked out in the second round as well. So yeah, that was quite some. We put some extra effort in it to really engage the people and to inform them in between as well, and also to be able to listen to what they would find interesting to talk about in the stakeholder workshop. So that's not our stakeholder workshop, but that would be tailored to their interests and their needs as well.
Yeah, I think Anna's comment suggests or shows how much effort went into the organization of all these workshops. I think if you get the 5-minute summary, it kind of feels like, okay, we did that, you know, everybody was there, but I think we've had a lot of discussions within the group, within the consortium around, you know, how do you know, it really is a challenge to get people on board and to make them come and make sure that when they are there, they get what they need and want. And of course, we'll hear more about this from the participants after the break in a quarter of an hour.
And Daan, perhaps a specific question: which kind of stakeholder group was difficult to engage? That is what people want to know.
Who would like to respond to this?
I could say something. I think industry was difficult because they are necessarily because they're not interested, but they have other obligations and other tasks that are, you know, that are maybe at that moment more important. So some of the industry people from industry that were involved in the first round did not have the time or the possibility to contribute in the second round. And I don't know how it was. Maybe Craig and Mark want to say something about that as well.
Yeah, I was just gonna go the other way and say which ones were easiest to recruit, and I would say that was the researchers, and I think that's partly because they're more open to have these speculative conversations where there's no immediate or obvious gain for themselves, because that's just how they work in general. But we found the same thing with policymakers in industry. They were harder to engage with.
I would just maybe add, if I may, that kind of a interesting group were NGOs or sustainable businesses, which kind of combined the different views of businesses and on the other hand, quite different views of the researchers. So I thought that they were kind of in between these two views. So they were something like kind of a translation between these opposite groups. So I found it quite interesting.
Just to let you know that if you would like to know more about this, we of course will tell you a little bit more about the tools we have on the website, etc. We also have, let's say, the more reflexive documents on all the stuff that worked well and didn't work so well. And so if you'd like to get a little bit more deeper into, let's say, the opportunities and the challenges, also feel free to drop any of us an email and we would be happy to share those documents as well. They are all public. So I'm looking, we have 3 minutes before the break. So one thing is to have another look at Slido, but maybe we could just try for, let's say, 20 seconds or so to see if anybody wants to take the floor just before the break with a question or a comment in the audience. We now have 56 participants, so it's grown. Oh, no, hang on, 55. So it's quite a few people. So let's see if anybody wants to take the floor. Sikke, if nobody does within, let's say, 15 or 20 seconds, then feel free to move to Slido again. Anyone? Don't be afraid. Hi, Tom. Welcome.
Thanks.
Nobody wants to pose a question? Shall we then move to you, Sikke?
Yes, because there are still a few really interesting questions. Two I would like to highlight. One question is, how could you ensure for the that the citizens' needs and concerns from the citizen consultation were taken into account in the stakeholder workshops?
That to me then?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go first. I think that was part of the reason why our methodology separated the citizens from the stakeholders, and that was so that we had more control over the value that these needs from the citizens could play in the co-creation process. So having the citizens and stakeholders together, then if they were all at the same meeting, then the stakeholders that have a more sort of professional background in the development of nanotechnology, they could have more of an opportunity to hog that discussion and that debate, and the needs and values of the citizens could be overshadowed by that. By separating them out, the opportunity was then given to us as the organisation, as the organisers of both the citizen workshops and the stakeholder workshops, for us to then take the citizens' message and put them right at the centre and at the start of the stakeholder workshop, and that's what we did. So we made sure that all of those messages from the citizens were presented directly to the stakeholder groups that we then had at the stakeholder workshops, and they were not forced to work with them, but that was the material that they were given to work with, and so that's how we ensured that all of those needs and values were taken on board.
Thanks, Craig. Lenka, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, hi everyone. I just wanted to add that from our perspective, it was also good that in the methodology we covered this by actually including a couple of citizens from the citizens workshop into the stakeholder workshop, so they were actively present at the stakeholder workshop, and they were kind of watchdogs, whether their ideas and the outcomes of citizens' discussions were taken into account during the stakeholder workshop. So this was just to be added, that not only the people that are dealing with the GoNano methodology directly, but also the citizens themselves could see that we actually really work on the issues that were identified as social needs in the context of nanotechnology.
Yeah. Thanks, Lenka. Looking at the time, I think there are many more questions on Slido to be addressed, but not to worry, we can also do this in the second session. So thanks to Sikke and the pilot partners, and also all you in the audience now for this interesting discussion. I suggest we have a 5-minute break, and then in 5 minutes, so 14:07, we reconvene, and then the pilot partners will be there, but also some of the participants in the workshops will be there to shed their light on what actually happened and how they experienced it. So please feel free to have a quick break, and we will see you in 5 minutes. Oh, I think we will reconvene. It's now 2:08. Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of this session. In this session, we have around a little less than 3/4 of an hour. We have until 2:45, in which we wanted not just to get the pilot partners' view. I mean, it's one thing to say how we experienced it, but we felt it could also be worthwhile, also a little bit scary, I have to admit, but also very worthwhile to see what those who were invited by us to the workshop made of it when they were there. So in this session, before we tell you a little bit more about the co-creation toolkit and all the stuff, we would like to get some let's say personal reflections from a number of participants, and I will just introduce them. First of all, also the pilot partners will of course be part of this conversation, so I would like all pilot partners to turn on their cameras again, and then also I would like to invite to turn the cameras on Lubos Komarek, who is chairman of the board of the Nanotechnology Research and Development Cluster. Welcome, Lubos. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. My Czech is a little bit rusty, so but I'm trying.
Right.
And I see that Adrienne has turned on her camera too. Adrienne is Adrienne Sips, by the way, not Adrienne Günther. I get sometimes confused, but it's Adrienne Sips, and she's research coordinator of nanotechnology at the RIVM in the Netherlands, the National Institute for Public Health and Environment. And she was a participant in the stakeholder workshop in the Netherlands. And there is Tom. I see, Tom, you have turned on your camera as well. Tom van Remmen, who was a participant, I think, both in the citizens and the stakeholder workshop in the Netherlands, right, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. And then there is Nicholas Surber. And Nicholas is a doctoral researcher, and he was a participant in the winter school, which was one of our education activities. So welcome, Nicholas. And then we have three more. Lucia Matamoros Pava. Lucia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, yes. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. And
Thank you.
Lucia is a master's researcher, and she facilitated at the citizen workshop, and she also participated in the first stakeholder workshop in Spain. So welcome, Lucia. And then there is Michaela Jedličková. I hope I pronounced that correctly, from the Ministry of the Agriculture of the Czech Republic Food Safety Department. And she was a participant in the stakeholder workshops in the Czech Republic. So welcome, Michaela.
Thank you.
And then our final participant is Marek Lukešle. And he's founder and CEO of the Sustainable Development Food Packaging Company. And he was a participant also in the stakeholder workshops in the Czech Republic. And do I see Marek on camera?
I think that he's trying to join right now, but he has some kind of technical difficulties.
Okay, well, let's see. Let's see if Marek can find his way in. But at least we have 6 people. Yeah, and as I said in the introduction, our main point here is to get your, just to get your views of how did you experience this whole thing, and are there any reflections that you have in retrospect on the whole thing and on the outcomes? And to be honest, it's not this heavily scripted. If you want, you can just jump in. And also now for other people in the audience, if you have questions to any of these people, feel free to raise your hand and jump in. But just to get a kind of a first glimpse for you all, Adrienne, maybe I can start with you. You were in the Dutch workshops on health. Could you say a little bit more on how you got there in the first place, and how you experienced those events?
Yes, thank you, Daan, and also thank you for the invitation to participate here. Yeah, I think I got involved because I already know you and Anne and Sikke, but also I worked together with Andrea Porcari in a risk governance project. And over the last, I could say, more than 10 years, it's one of my, let's say, personal ambitions to make a better connection between risk governance of nanotechnology and innovation. As I see, also from a policy point of view, it often are two separate worlds, and they need to come together. And I was really fascinated by the approach you had for this project, because I think co-creation and also involving civil society was already, I think, something well, let's say, grey lines outlined for the Green Deal, the European policy, well, quite some years ago. So I think for me, the very interesting thing is in how to bring together the civil society perspectives, not only societal challenges, but also the civil society perspective, innovators with bright ideas and new technologies that are really exciting, I would say. but also how we from a safety and risk governance perspective can keep pace with this all. And I think I was really grabbed by the first workshop already on how you present the proposal and the activities. So it's really a compliment from my side for the structure of all your activities. But also I was really looking forward on how do you give shape, because co-creation is such a nice word, but putting it into practice is something different, I would say. And I've become more and more enthusiastic, I think, about your project, as I think that co-creation is a word which is, for example, all over the new EU program Horizon Europe. And it's like with safe and sustainable, it's let's say a word which sounds quite simple, but putting it into practice beyond a project, that is, I think, something which is really challenging. How can we make co-creation a kind of, let's say, way of approaching innovations? Yeah, I think that is the real challenge ahead, but I think this project is a great start for it.
Thank you, Adrienne, for very nice words. Would anybody literally like to reflect on Adrienne's words here before we move to the next participant?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, Lubos, please.
Perfect. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure of being here today. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to reflect on Adriana's questions because, of course, nanotechnology has the one really important part, and that's the nanosafety. So I really feel I'm really very glad that this was also opened many times on your workshops and on your events, because this is something that really should be harmonized at the European level, because nano is safety, we know it. And also there should be some differentiation between, nanostructures, like we have nanoparticles, we have nanolayers, we have nanofibers. I would like to ask Adriana, because I know that, for instance, Czech Republic is a cradle of nanofibers, and we invented first equipment for industrial production in 2004 by Technical University. Are the nanofibers embedded in the EU safety side, or there is still a general approach to separate nanostructures into various groups?
Well, if you approach it through attention, I think it is certainly a point of attention, but I think where really is room for improvement for all of us is to get better connected to each other, because when you look at innovations, most of the times first the innovations come, and then, well, at a fairly late stadium, then regulations are checked for whether they are fully applicable or not. And especially for nanomaterials or these nanostructures, as you mentioned, it is not that obvious for everybody. I often call the example of self-driving cars. I think it raises much earlier awareness with especially also regulators that you need something special for that, although it's still a car with four wheels and brakes and those kind of things. But when it's not that obvious for everybody or not that easy to grab, then it becomes much more difficult. And I think in that respect, it's also very important to include civil society it can be okay, what do you think about that safety part? How does it balance for you as a user with the potential benefits of this product? But on the other hand, also, perhaps just explain and communicate with each other. And I think co-creation is also a part of communicating what do I as an innovator have in mind with best intentions, but what do the other stakeholders have in mind, also with best intentions, and how to bring that together. And for me, it's also obvious over the years that it's not that obvious, to use the word again, who brings these stakeholders together. There's not, that's quite diffuse. It's often in projects embedded, but there's no real structure for it, for who is. It's not to be in charge, but just, I call it most of the times who puts things on the agenda, brings people together, and looks for the coffee and those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's two things in that, Adriana. The one is that we also found that this point of mutual learning is absolutely the key of what we're doing here, and not easy at all, because we have so our disciplines, but also our values and viewpoints can be so far apart that is absolute key to start even co-creation. And then you're absolutely right, Adrian. There is no, let's say, standard institutionalized procedure or mechanism by which this is done. So these are very often one-offs, whereas we feel once we engage in them, these should be embedded and integrated in our, let's say, our entire innovation structure, as it were. So I'm thinking maybe that's a good point to move over to Lucia, because you were at both the citizen and the stakeholder workshop. How did you experience this? You're a master's researcher. Were you able to kind of connect with all the different blood types, as I sometimes call them, in the room? Or how did that discussion, were you able to find each other in the end?
Well, actually, to my surprise, it was a bit more difficult to connect during the workshop with the citizens, because the whole conversation revolved around completely different topics. Because when you're like within the research field, you get used to having conversations about technology that go very much in depth into certain topics. And then when you take a step back and you go to a completely different sphere, which could be just a general citizen that is just focused on completely different things, you get to learn that the way your technology and your research affects like any citizen, it affects them in like different scenarios that maybe you didn't even think about. So for me, like, since they were coming from a completely different position, the conversation was a bit new to me. So I had to like make the effort to change the perspective and like actually empathize in a different manner with them as to how these technologies were affecting them and why they raised the worries that they were raising and why they had different opinions, different thoughts, what informations they were really listening to. But then with the second workshop and the stakeholder workshop, it was a conversation I was much more used to, and it was quite interesting to take both into account and actually merge them and have the opportunity to feel this continuous work that was being done within this co-creation workshop, because you could see how one affected the other in any way.
Yeah, thanks, Lucia. Yeah, so it takes some getting used to is kind of the take-home message here, and let's say exposure to different viewpoints. Michaela, would you want to comment on this? You're yet another blood type, if I may. How did you experience participation in these events?
It's usual for me that many people don't know policies in place. So when I participated on the workshop, it wasn't a surprise for me that many people don't know that there are any regulations in place for nanotechnology. And it was I met both with the industry, scientists, and citizens, and it was at start totally visible to which group the people belong to, because for generally citizens have no idea about the applicability of nanotechnology, so their first ideas were kind of science fiction. and some magical products that can help heal the world or something like that. And of course, there was the scientific part of the audience that said, "Oh, this is not possible. We could do this, but maybe a little bit, but it's not applicable and or doable." And of course, the industry part is usually interested in the regulation and how to market their product, and if they can use some marketing or somehow go around it. Or so it was very interesting. We at the ministry would like to keep in touch with all of these groups um, to broaden the knowledge about policy and what is needed from our side to do for the industry or the citizens, and what is needed from the other side for us also. So of course, the contact is needed from our side. The worst case scenario for us, and I think that for the industry also, is that we already have some product and on the market, and we say it's not possible to market it. There is some problem from the regulation side or the safety side. I don't know. And those are the worst wars between industry and policymakers. So I'm really happy with that this project occurred, and we are trying to cooperate with FBOs from the idea of from the point of idea. That they have idea about some product and how to make it happen. So it's really good that this project broadened the knowledge about the to industry, that they really can contact us and ask what they can do. That we are not the control body, but we can offer some ways to make something happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Michaela. I think you're introducing two absolutely key points there. And the one key point is this question on, you know, how do you, if you do this co-creation event, how do you make sure that everybody, or at least the majority who is there, gets what they need and is interested in? And I really like that you kind of make it so concrete in this interaction with industry and policy. But that's, I think, you know, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this. If you're doing co-creation, that's something that needs to be at the top of your mind all the time. And maybe some of the either the pilot partners or the participants or anyone in the audience would like to reflect on that in a minute. The second point, I think, also absolutely key to our entire discussions: how do we move from reflection to action? I think it was also in your summary slide, Anna. So we've seen this everywhere, I think, right? Pilot partners, correct me if I'm wrong, but you start off with these wild ideas, and then you get the immediate response, yeah, but in nanotech, it's not what we're working on. You know, it's a product that we can't make. So, so how do you strike the balance on the one hand between unlocking the creative mind of the group, whereas we're not being held back by what is being done, but we can focus on what we want to be done or what we think should be achieved or where we want to go, the co-creative dimension, and at the same time not end up in speculations about a better world that really don't have any connections to the actual innovations that we're creating in nanotechnology. So I don't know who, you know, anyone to reflect on either the first or the second point. So either on how do we get what we need, how do we respond to the needs in the group, and the second one is how do we combine, balance creative thinking, creativity with, let's say, making a difference in actual research and innovation practice.
Well, if I may. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Lubos, yeah,
Hello.
please go
Yeah.
ahead.
As I'm chairman of the Nano-Progress Cluster Organization, I think one of the ways could be really to use the cluster organizations, because at the EU level, it's a strong community. and we are basically facilitators, and we are focusing to push the results of the R&D toward industry. So we understand the needs of the companies, and we understand the offer of the R&D institutions, because these are two completely different words in my perceiving, because the R&D, they doesn't care much about money and time sometimes, and the industry cares only about money and time. So that's one way to do this within the umbrella of the cluster organizations. And of course, another is somehow cooperate or make strong cooperation between industry and R&D. We created also a company for this in our cluster called Nanotech Dynamics. I know that this is free commercial, but anyhow. And exactly the aim is this one, because we developed within cluster organization our own research teams, and now we are pushing the results to the market. And we have some success in this, but now I understand how difficult sometimes is to, capitalize upon what you already invented in R&D and put it to market. It's not easy way. Huh? So just for the records, any help and any support for product development and technology development for the companies, it's highly important, because at the A level normally or mostly it's research and development or pre-applied research, then there is SME instruments, etc. And we had a project called VIDA, and the project was especially for product development and technology development for the SMEs, that they can go to market and support the innovation uptake. And the demand was very, very high. So one way of this is to give some money for high TRL innovations and to find some more financial sources at the EU level for these purposes. That's one key step as well.
I wanted to ask Marek to, and I saw him for a minute, but has he left again? Lenka, have you do you know his No, I don't think he is.
I think he's offline now. He was here, but he had some trouble with it.
Okay.
I'm really sorry about this.
No, that's no problem. But I was thinking he's the one that working at the food.
Oh yeah. I will let you know once he's back.
Other reflections about this? Adrienne?
Yes, I think the question, as you phrased, is to move from unlocking what's in the mind of a group and put this into practice. What we often hear from innovation of innovators is that they sometimes see regulations as a barrier, and as I addressed before, that is, let's say, for nanomaterials or nanostructures already quite often has been in place. What I think is therefore also important that there is at an early stage of this innovation a contact between regulators, innovators, but also society. And I think one of the challenges that is also put forward by the new Green Deal ambitions is, for example, this zero pollution, non-toxic and sustainable goals. It sounds as very ambitious words, but as I notice it in Brussels, it's really something that also needs to be brought to practice. And I can imagine from a point of view of let's say, what is in the mind of the groups that you have consulted at the front, that these words are also becoming more and more noticeable, besides, let's say, a nice or a very ambitious technical solution. And by already from initial stages, putting these things together, but it means also bringing persons together representing these different aspects. I think it can makes a more efficient way to, in the end, putting it into practice. So no surprises in the end, or no additional requests during your R&D to putting it into practice. And I can imagine that many innovators have been confronted over the last years with these additional things, but we, I think, have to learn from each other what is realistic, what is feasible, perhaps how can we go for in the next 5 years to achieve various goals, but what is achievable in the next 10 years. And yeah, I think having an eye for each other's barriers, as you might say, it would be very helpful. And I think, again, co-creation is helping there. And also a bit to the present situation about the COVID-19. I think what I heard during the Research and Innovation Days of the European Commission, there were a few words that came over and over on the table, and that was also preparedness and resilience. And I think these two words can be addressed by co-creation, but in early stages. So let's say all the way from these bright ideas up to putting things into practice. Co-creation needs to be performed. So it's not only something you do at the start of getting the ideas, but you need to continue that, I think, until the end on the market.
Yeah. So
perhaps related to what Adrienne is saying, and there's a question here on Slido, is to what extent, and yeah, perhaps this is also a question for Tom then, to what extent can citizens be involved in this process, even early on already or later on? And yeah, what can their effect be on this decision-making process of nanotechnology development?
Yeah, I think what Adrienne did was to add another layer of complexity on the already complex question of translation from R&D to innovation, as Lubos was entering, and the whole policy questions around that Michaela introduced. And actually, Adrienne is saying, well, that's complex enough, but if you want to realize Green Deal ambitions, you need even more. You also need to look at those outside in society who will receive it, and even the environment where it will end up, and integrate that all the way at the beginning of your innovation pipeline. So yes, I think, Sika, you're absolutely right. The question is actually to Tom. No pressure, Tom, but you were there as a citizen. I don't like the word citizen in parentheses because you were just Tom, of course. But how did you feel, being dragged into such a discussion at a very early stage of technology development? Did that make sense to you? How did you experience that?
Well, I joined both of the sessions, and it was a bit because I was there. Yeah.
Your sound is very what's the word? Very bad.
Is it better like this?
Not really. Do you have a fixed microphone or?
Yeah, on my laptop.
Could you give it one more try? If not, I'll have to.
Yes.
It's very poor.
Yeah. Is it better like this?
No.
No. Oh.
It's a shame. I would have loved to hear your comments, but unfortunately, it's too bad to really follow. Could you maybe put a few lines in the chat or on the Slido? It can, yeah, preferably on the Slido Q&A, so that Sika can then translate it. Would that be a way forward, Tom? Sorry about this, but it's just very difficult to hear. As we're doing that, perhaps Nicholas, yeah, Anna, I saw that you raised your hand. I would like to give Nicholas the floor, and then over to you, Anna, because you're actually doing research on this, right? The whole, let's say, interaction of science and society. Could you say a little bit, if you hear this discussion, what is your take on that?
Yes, apologies. Thanks for asking me to be brought in here. Yeah, so that's exactly accurate. I'm working with a lot of people in science, technology, and society studies. So these are questions that we do every day of the week. So right now, what I'm really looking at is basically the makings and doings of responsibility. So how how we do responsibility in terms of these translation processes. How does responsibility go from policy to action? And this is just a very interesting conversation. I had a seminar last week about my work, and I had a really thoughtful comment, and it was basically along the lines, in the GoNano-project and what we're talking about right now is, responsibility or co-creation in terms of things and products, innovations, technology, sciences, all these, outputs, to be short, right? But the bigger question is, like, what is it that we're making responsible? The discussion that I'm really interested in pursuing is the researchers and the innovators, and the publics, right? Because what is responsibility when we go through a co-creation process? So basically, can these innovations that we're talking about, can they really be responsible, or is it the researchers that are being responsible? So that's kind of something that I'm really working with, because I think there's so much focus on these kind of low-hanging fruit of saying that this is a really bad innovation, or this is a really good innovation. But what can we do about the researchers and their own process, which is a lot about the winter school, for example, where you're trying to indirectly make us more responsible and behave better. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another key question, Nicholas. Who bears the responsibility? We have causes and effects. We have developments. We have nanotechnologies entering the market, and some of them we applaud. Others we have maybe concerns over. Who does this? Who is in this multi-actor world? Who bears the responsibility? I think it's also a question that was raised during the workshops, and the key one to address. I'd like to the panel members to just briefly reflect on this, but not before we try once more with Tom, because you're now on your phone, Tom, I think.
Yes, is it better like this?
Oh, it's a lot better.
Yeah.
So please go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so for me it was, I was there as a citizen indeed, and also because I'm a diabetic with kind of two different hats on. So I was quite informed about the topic, but I was discussing this, there was this example about diabetes, but I was also very well informed. So it was interesting to see how I already was a bit deeper into the topic, and other members were addressing topics which I thought weren't that important, but they are. But as I really would like to see some kind of solutions, I don't make it that important. And then the next step with also the other professionals who are deeper into it, yeah, it was interesting to see that. And I agree on what Lucia was saying a bit earlier on. Yeah. And maybe you can remind me of the question as I was changing.
Well, that was way back. You don't necessarily need to respond. It was quite I think a tricky question. It's this question that Adrienne introduced about it's not just a matter anymore of translating from R&D to innovation or to production, which is difficult enough. If we want to realize Green Deal ambitions, we have to include those very early perspective, let's say societal perspectives, into the innovation as we move forward. And that's when I put the question to you, but this may be a tricky one to answer, really.
Yeah, indeed.
I think maybe that is telling for one of the major findings that we had, that if we want to talk real innovation, it's almost like we have to narrow down the questions to levels where individual actors take individual decisions. And that's also what happened in your workshop, Tom, with the artificial pancreas. We started talking at the very detailed level about the user involvement in the design of the interaction screen, of the interface of the artificial pancreas. Whereas, the things we're talking about now are I think, a lot more difficult to translate to the individual level. And still, I agree with Adrienne, also that needs to happen. So I'm just looking at the time, and we have one more minute. I could go on for hours with you. I think we have so many themes that we haven't even begun to address. Anna has been raising her hands for about 15 minutes now, so I think she deserves the floor. And then I think we will need to move on to the co-creation tools by presentation by Craig. But please, Anna, before we do, please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I can reflect a little bit on what Adrienne and Nicolaas, but also Lubus said, of starting to say. So I think it's, if you, Adrienne mentioned preparedness and resilience, and co-creation can make you more aware of more prepared maybe to what is happening or what is important in society's needs. And then maybe specifically for us now, we're talking about nanotechnology, but also for other topics. And I think that relates maybe not only to co-creation as a method, but also to other engagement methods. And for me, it also shows something like it's like building a relationship or working on a sustainable relationship in long term. And the benefit of the GoNano was, in my view, that it had multiple ways of engaging with different groups in different moments. So that was a kind of long-term relationship. And if I look back now, I have some contact still with one of the researchers that participated in the GoNano workshops, Bursu. And for her, it changed her perspective on how she wanted to do research. And recently, I also was in contact with one of the students who was in the winter school as well. She started now with a PhD in nanotechnology, and she was telling me that she was considering a different kind of job after her PhD, in which she wanted to connect more policy making and research to each other. So I think that's, maybe not at this moment, it's really difficult to come to concrete actions and project suggestions, but it certainly does something with some people in the way they maybe reflect on doing research or engaging with citizens or with other stakeholders. And that is something maybe for a longer term effect, and in which you see then later how science and society and groups in science and society can interact or can work with each other or take care of each other's needs, maybe. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, Anna, I think that is a very important point you're making there, by way of conclusion of this discussion almost, that, we very explicitly called it exploration of co-creation, in the sense that no way that, we're gonna answer all these questions in a single European project. And it was hit and miss. We found a lot of things that did work. We also found a lot of things that didn't work. And we found out a lot about the complexity of addressing these questions in the first place. And this was all just a drop in the ocean. But still, talking with you now, I kind of am reconfirmed in my own enthusiasm, which I hope you will share, that we also found some really kind of productive openings into how you could manage these sorts of co-creation exercises in various settings. So at the most minute scale of incremental product involvement, all the way up to realizing Green Deal ambitions. So I think we should wrap it up with those final comments. Let me all thank you very much though for attending and joining and contributing. Very, very worthwhile. But looking at the time, I think we need to move over to Craig, because he has some information for all of you on the different tools and outputs that we created. So Craig, please.
Yep, thanks, Dan. But before I do that, I just wanted to flag to everybody that we do actually have another hour after this where we'll leave the Zoom chat open, and that the GoNano partners will be available. So if anybody wants to follow up on some of the conversations that you've been listening to or been having, then we'll all be here for the time after 3 o'clock, and it won't be a recorded session, so we can continue the conversations in a more relaxed format. But yeah, the point for me to discuss here is that the project has been going on for close to 3 years, or just a little bit over 3 years, and we've produced a lot of material, and all of that material is on the GoNano website. But because there is so much of it, it can be quite difficult to navigate. So what we've actually developed is our own tool in the format of a brochure. So I'm just going to take you to the website. I'll share my screen again. And show you what we've actually produced. So here on my screen here, you can see the GoNano website. So that's the GoNano-project.eu, and then /brochure takes you to this tool here, which is really just a tool for navigating all of the information and all of the deliverables and guidelines and videos that we've produced throughout these 3 years of work. So for the brochure, it's set up as this tool that you can navigate using the forwards and backwards arrows. So this is like the home screen effectively, or you can use these little triangular purple indicators or icons to take you to the different sections of the project that you want to investigate. So for example, the co-creation process that we were talking about earlier, if you click on that, it'll take you to this menu here that covers all of the challenges that we met along the way, the lessons learned, and then there's actually sub-menus within that on the different topics. So you can explore energy, or you can explore health or food, and then you can come back. You can explore the menu by your stakeholder group. So for example, if you're a citizen, then you would want to go to the citizens sub-menu, where here there's a list of different information that would be more applicable to you as a citizen. So for example, this guide here that we've got on how to become involved in nanotechnology research and development. And then also these future scenarios that I touched upon earlier in my own presentation. So if you're a researcher then, for example, you would go to the research menu, and here you've got the list of tools and different things that are more applicable to you as a researcher. And everything is functional as a link, so it'll actually take you out of the brochure into the right point in the project website. So if I click on this link here for the toolkit for researchers, that'll take me directly to the page on the website that's exploring these toolkit for researchers and engineers. And that toolkit itself has got a lot of information that you would find useful as a researcher. So for example, it's got a PowerPoint presentation, it's got these practical and strategic canvases that are designed to help anybody that's wanting to plan their own co-creation event. So I invite you all to go back to the GoNano website, find the brochure and navigate through it, and you should be able to find a lot of the information that we've been talking about today and a lot more. So please take the time after this session to go and have a look and investigate for yourself. And the other thing I would say is that, as Dan said, we've been working on this, and we want to foment that message that co-creation is a useful tool for the development of nanotechnology. So if you would like some help in using some of the tools that we've developed, or have questions or want advice, then our contact details are also on the website. So you could contact us, and we'd be willing to help you out with that as well. So that's all I wanted to do for now. And now it's time to head back to Dan, and then to Lise, who will do the official wrap up of the session before we have that unofficial networking session afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Well, actually, no lot more from me, except wanting to thank you all. First of all, our technical support in Denmark at DBT. We haven't even noticed that they're there, but that makes their job all the more impressive, because you wouldn't believe how much work goes into getting all this organized. So thanks to you, and of course to Sikke as our wonderful chat moderator, the pilot partners for their presentations, all the participants, thank you for your contribution. Really really interesting and fascinating reflections. And of course, all the participants in the room, still some 50 plus people. It was great. We'll hope to see you in the after party, which starts at about 10 minutes. So please feel free to join. I think that the login will be shared, Sigrid, right? Either in the Zoom or in the Slido Q&A. And with that, thank you all. I would like to pass the floor back to our coordinator, Lisa.
Yes. I would like to echo that. Thank you very much, everyone. I've been listening through the last 2 hours, and it has been really great. It has been really such a pleasure for us here in the control room to listen to and hear your experiences and take home messages from participating in our project. So really, thank you very much also for taking the time to come online today and share them with us and with everyone else listening. Thank you also to the pilot partners who organized this session today. Okay, as it's already been said, it's time to wrap up, and there will be a networking session following this session. We would like to ask you to do one final thing in the Slido Q&A, and that is to provide us with your take-home messages. So please go to the Slido Q&A now and leave there your take-home messages. Other than that, I also just wanted to introduce you to our program next week. So the next week is the last session of our conference. The theme of that session is practicing societal engagement in research and innovation. And actually, one of the sessions there is a policy roundtable on how we can create conditions for societal engagement in research and innovation and options for support. So I hope that session also will address some of the questions today that were raised, for example, on who is it actually that takes these messages further? Who is it actually that brings people together? So that we have a policy roundtable on that next week with participants from many different backgrounds. The second topic next week takes us a little bit outside of our own project and outside of the world of nanotechnologies, but there we have gathered a really great group of other projects that have also worked with co-creation or have worked with other ways of engaging society and engaging different types of stakeholders in industry, in research, and other types of local organizations. And they will join us to tell us about their experiences and their perspectives for how we can move this agenda forward. So that's next Thursday, November 12th, 1 p.m. And we're really hoping that you will join us there as well and looking forward to that. Okay, Sigrid, now I'm very curious to hear what are the take-home messages that have come in the Slido Q&A. Are you there, Sigrid?
Yes, sorry, I was in the poll, but I had to go to the Q&A as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there was one person who said, perhaps not really take-home message, but also another question who was wondering, yeah, what did not work in these co-creation workshops? I think that would be a really great question to discuss later, right, in the more informal meeting, because there are plenty, of course, of stories also to indicate what worked less. What we tried was trial and error, as Daan said. Yeah, then the I don't see the today's take-home messages. I see them on the slide. Some people say it's good reflection on the co-creation process, embed co-creation in research and development and the regulatory process to ensure safe innovations and fulfill the policy ambitions, also in the Green Deal, for example. Another person says co-creation is a good way of ensuring citizens and other stakeholders in nanotechnology development. I hear some music. in nanotechnology development and governance, as well as the EU Green Deal. And this is also a nice comment, I think. Someone says co-creation is really, really hard, but it's generally a useful tool in situations like GoNano as we move forward in European research and innovation with Horizon Europe. And I think this is a really nice conclusion, right? It takes a lot of effort and it is really difficult, but it can also, it's also really valuable, I think.
Yes, I think that also resonates with one of the big take-home messages that I jotted down when listening, is that taking part in these activities it can be a bit of a shock in the beginning to come outside of your own world where you are used to moving around and the people that you're used to talking with, but it's also at the end of the day really worth it to have heard and have learned about other perspectives and other ways of seeing things. So yes, that's, I think, so the processes can be hard and can be difficult to set up, but in the end they're really worth it. Okay, I think that was what we had for you today. Now, as has been said a couple of times, there's the opportunity to hang with us for a little bit longer. And this informal networking meeting is in the same Zoom call as this. So just stay on the line and we'll continue this if you would like to. Thank you very much for today.
Hi, Andrea. Good to see you.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Craig. Good morning. Hi, Dan. Thank you so much. It was super interesting. And for last week too. Sorry I couldn't join after the last session, but I'm here now.
Where are you now, Andrea?
I'm in Mexico, but
Still
we're
in Mexico.
Leaving to New Zealand in a few days.
Have you been stuck all the time?
Well, stuck is it was a delightful stuck.
Okay. Good.
I just maybe I can take this opportunity to just introduce myself to everyone, because I've just become aware of the GoNano-project over the last few months and have been chatting with Craig and Daan, and my area of research is a little bit different. I'm a creative practice-based researcher with a background in molecular pathology and also filmmaking. So largely what I'm doing with my work is I'm a science artist and I work with nanoscientists. So what I've been really interested in is creating immersive forms of engaging with nanotechnology and largely using media technologies. So I've started to shift into the social and cultural space over the last couple of years.